The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not representative of the opinions and doctrine of Morris Community Church. We reserve the right to change our minds, and we reserve the right to be wrong. Welcome to the Roasted Christian Podcast Season 3.
Yay! I'm John. Here at the Roasted Christian, we like our ideas the way we like our coffee, roasted.
Do you really like your ideas roasted?
No, I'm very protective of my ideas. And
That's why we're doing a podcast?
To have them challenged.
By anyone. Well, hopefully, listeners, if you're, we've been able to challenge over the last 2 seasons some of your ideas and roast your ideas, and you can roast ours. And I know I've been, a lot of my thinking in certain either theological things or social things or whatever has been challenged. Hopefully yours has been too. That's what our goal is continually, is to challenge our thinking and challenge what we're doing and why we're doing it, and to better ourselves and better the gospel message. And yeah.
Let's be real. If you're still here for season 3, I mean,
you might be tracking with us.
Yeah.
And by tracking with us, I mean, you've probably been told you're wrong by us in multiple different ways. All good. I mean, it's good to know you're wrong. I mean, that's I mean, for everyone else out there, it's good for you to know. It's not for me, but for you, it's very good.
I don't want to know that I'm wrong. But everybody else who listens can definitely know that they're wrong.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited for the new season to be upon us now. And we're excited for the different guests that we're hopefully going to be lining up for this season. We're going to have a great interview today with 4 gentlemen in studio. And we're going to be talking about discipleship and church and different ways of doing it, and a method and model that these gentlemen have found that brings life for them, and to challenge our way of thinking of kind of traditional church, 4 walls, that kind of thing. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be talking a little bit about our coffee. We have some chit-chat, and then our segment at the end, we're going to have a new one called Ancient Arguments. And in post, I'll do, echoes. But yeah, we're going to be discussing an ancient argument. So stay tuned for that at the end after the interview. So,
as in, this is something the Greeks were arguing about?
It's very possible.
Okay.
I mean, we don't know for sure, but this has been going on for a long time.
I'm honored to be a part of this.
Yeah, this will lend to good discussion. Okay, so quickly into our coffee. For lots of the things we'll be doing for the coffee segment, maybe this year, we're kind of trying to change it up, see what you as the listeners like to hear, what you want to hear, what we like to talk about when it comes to coffee. So I'm actually, and John and I we're going to highlight some blogs or some videos or some tips that you can go ahead and jump on board and try. And we'd love to hear your feedback about different things that you're reading about coffee and new ways to drink it, new methods, new sciences, new whatever, to kind of broaden your horizons when it comes to your understanding of coffee, your enjoyment of coffee, and our enjoyment of coffee. So, John, did you know?
I did not.
That there is a U.S. Coffee Championship.
No, but now that I do, I'm impressed.
Yeah, this is really neat. So I stumbled upon this website. If you go to uscoffeechampionships with an s.org, it shows in April, there was the 2017 U.S. Coffee Championships held in Washington State Convention Center, Seattle, Washington. And they have 4 major categories, and the winners of these categories go on to the World Championships in coffee, held in South Korea? Or is it North? It's not North Korea. It's going to be South Korea.
There's only one option, Bob.
Yeah, it's going to be South Korea. So there's 4 different categories. There's the Barista Champion, the Brewer's Cup, the Roaster Champion, and the Cup Taster's Champion.
Nice.
It's very interesting. So if you just, like, for instance, I'll go to the Barista Championships. Right? It's a platform for baristas to enhance their espresso beverage making skills through an exciting and challenging competition. In 15 minutes, the barista must prepare and serve espressos, cappuccinos, and a personally designed signature beverage for 4 sensory judges, all while being assessed on their preparation abilities by 2 technical judges. And if you watch some of the videos of how they do it, they're talking, they're friendly. It's kind of like their own little coffee cooking show. That they're trying to interact with the customers who are the judges while preparing all of their coffee for them. It's really interesting. There's rules and regulations and judge sheets, and I believe there was a finalist from Minneapolis this year. So really interesting. Go check it out, uscoffeechampionships.org, to learn a little bit about some competition coffee.
Can I just say I would love to be the sensory judge?
Oh, absolutely.
And just drink probably the best coffee ever made. Like,
so I wouldn't want to be a judge until I'm prepared and ready to be like, okay, your flower notes of the almond sensories was a little bit lacking, and what you
definitely have the tone down, Bob.
Yeah, right. I would like to be in the crowd where they take like, oh, here's the leftover coffee, and we're going to be passing it out to the crowd if they were to do that. If they're not doing that, that's totally an idea you guys should be doing. Obviously, there's probably lots of coffee for people to drink, but I want to be tasting the stuff the competitors are giving out. So the leftover coffee maybe should be handed out to some people in the crowd. And then they can get crowd scoring and get like voting for that. Like that would be an additional score onto the judges' score. I don't know. But
so I think it's cool. 2017, both the Brewers Cup champion and the Roaster Championship are from the Onyx Coffee Lab.
Ooh.
So we might have a company to check out.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. So check that out for some interesting, if you like competition and you like coffee, check out the U.S. Coffee Championships. That'll be leading to the World Championships. All right.
They're in Arkansas.
The U.S. ones was in Arkansas?
No, the Onyx Coffee Lab.
Oh, the Onyx Coffee Lab. Okay. Arkansas?
Handcrafted small batch coffee.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Can you buy some?
There's a shop.
Bananas.
We might have to do this.
Okay. That's your new goal. Buy some.
Okay. We need a sponsor. It's $22 a pound.
Somebody, maybe we should start a Patreon page so that way people could buy.
There we go. Yeah.
Buy into our buying some coffee for the cause of your listening pleasure. Let us drink something, and we'll highlight that you supported us by buying us some coffee beans. That'd make our day and our podcast. Literally, it would help make the podcast.
Yes, it would.
All right, so we're taping this kind of in a weird timeline succession. So bear with us. It doesn't matter because it's a podcast, right? Yeah. So Kathy Griffin just cut off a model of Donald Trump's head, all bloodied, and took a photo shoot of this, and then just got reamed by everyone. And then she comes back and says, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I crossed the line.
Yeah.
So, okay. She had to have known this was dumb, right?
I mean, you would think. I've seen articles about, like, oh, well, if you're going to make art, it's got to be shocking in order to make to get people to recognize what you're doing. And why should she have to apologize for this? You would think she saw it coming.
Yeah. So, okay, did she cross the line? Al Franken was quoted as saying that she crossed the line. Way crossed the line. What is the line? And how do you know when you cross it? Is the line like murder? Is the line hate crime? Is the line like... Where's the line?
I mean, personally, my line would probably be murder. Which I feel like that's a fairly
raping and
safe...
pillaging going all the way up to there is okay, but
yeah,
but not
cool.
murder?
Whatever. I don't know. I mean, this also isn't a literal thing.
Yeah.
Or was it? Are we considering this like a
threat? No, I don't. This is not a threat. She should not be investigated by the Secret Service, right? And this is not a comparison to oh, if someone would have done this with Obama as president, or someone would have done no, that like like to me that's kind of irrelevant because it's just about I don't know. Is there a taste? It's not even comedic, right? It's because there's some, you know, in comedy, there's almost kind of like a people get by with being able to do stupid, radical, and say incredible bad things, but for in the realm of comedy, there's like, I don't know, not a forgiveness level towards that, but like, oh, that was just a bad joke, we move on.
Right. Well,
but I mean, this was like a photo shoot of like his head severed in blood.
Yeah.
There's no comedic element to it. She's making a political statement of like,
well,
we need to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, her apology,
if necessary,
was in the vein of like a comedian. She's like, as a comic or like as a comedian,
that's not your
I
past,
crossed
right?
the line,
Yeah.
I moved the line, I jumped back and forth, like, and I went too far. So,
but
I understand how it offends people, is what she said.
Yeah. I get comedians like crossing the proverbial line, right?
But you don't think she was in that camp?
In that moment, there's no comedy to it. It's a photo shoot.
Yeah.
Now, if
I would agree. She crossed the line.
Chickens in the background with it, like that doesn't just make it a comedy shoot now. Like, you know what I mean? It's weird. Should there be a line with comedy too? Like I've kind of gone back and forth with this a little bit.
Right. I think hypothetically, we should always put freedom of speech first as far as politics are involved. That said, for like my own personal sensibilities, like it's just way too far.
Yeah, I think there are some jokes and some just topics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I can't say the word off limits, but I would say like I wouldn't be making jokes about these things.
Right.
You know, like.
But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't make jokes about that like comedians do.
Yeah, that comedians do.
Like people consider funny.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, humor is a very.
To be totally honest, like I've laughed at some of these jokes. To be totally honest, I can see how someone can take a subject and find a funny in it, or take it in such a radical like hypothetical situation that then you're like, wow, that disarmed the intenseness of the subject maybe,
right.
and made it humorous. Like murder itself is not humorous. Like actual murder is not funny, right? There's no funny part to it. But comedians have been joking about killing things or people. Like you can make a joke about how someone or death in general.
Yep.
Like there can be humor there. So that's what's weird is like the line itself cannot necessarily be the subject, but just how it's done. And is it kind of like that judge's answer how to define what pornography is? I know it when I see it. Like you don't know what the line is until you've seen that someone crossed it, and then you go, "Yep, you crossed it." Well, where's the line? I don't know, but I know you crossed it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she crossed it, right?
Yeah, she crossed it. I think the majority of America would agree. I mean, she said it herself.
She agreed. She crossed
it. I don't. Yeah. If you think as a listener that there's any way that this is justified, I would be curious to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really doubt it, but so that's what's been happening. In other news, I saw the latest installment, not the final installment, of Alien.
Okay.
And
you were telling me you like this.
I really like these movies. It's not my typical go-to genre, but the xenomorph itself, I think, is the coolest monster ever created.
Okay.
Period. So seeing that on film is cool. And then I saw this thing pop up on, it was Google Now, I think. They know me better than I know me. And it says, Alien Covenant returns to the theme that made the original so scary. Men giving birth.
Oh, man.
So yeah, the whole idea, and it's totally intentional, is like because these movies are dude movies.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I mean, you might see a couple ladies in there, but not many.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is basically to make men squirm as much as possible, and the way to do that is like just totally unnatural, lethal birth. It's like, what is going on?
Now, males giving birth is not a totally new thing in cinema, where we've had Arnold Schwarzenegger had to give birth. What was the name of that movie? He's with Danny DeVito, right?
Yeah.
Dang
I've
it.
seen it, but I don't
I've seen it too. I don't remember the name. People out there, help us. I don't want to Google it. Like, I want to Google it, but I don't want to Google it.
I'm never getting there, so
Google.
I will Google it, and you can.
Oh man. Well,
take
anyway.
cracks at it.
I thought I shut that off. Dang it. What is it? You had to have found it by now. Arnold Schwarzenegger, pregnant movie, Danny DeVito.
Is it The Kid and I? No,
Maybe.
that's 2005. What year
way
was
earlier. Way earlier than
Yeah.
that. This was in the 90s.
Danny DeVito. Twins.
Yeah. So do they in Aliens, is it a nice beautiful C-section of giving birth, like in a controlled environment?
No. They do the throwback to the original where one comes out the stomach.
Yes. Violently?
Yes. But it's quick because that's the second occurrence in the movie. The first one is out the back. Like it's really like I say, like I usually don't go for these movies, but the way they do it, it's like I was telling a buddy of mine, there's absolutely no camp in these movies left. It's like Interstellar gone wrong. Like,
oh man.
Okay, here's this planet that's going to be awesome and we're going to be able to live here forever. Oh wait, actually everything we touch and see and breathe is out to kill us and it's going to like rip out our insides. And like I don't know, man. The way the special effects are nowadays, like you can't tell.
All right, so I have to see the original. Okay, if I have to see the original,
Okay.
then what movie in between should I really need to see before I watch this one? And how many are there?
I believe there are 5.
Oh man.
And there's one more required. Okay, so the Prometheus ones are prequels to the Alien.
Okay.
And I think that Ridley Scott said that there needs to be one more after Alien Covenant to bring us back to the original Alien. So that will mean 6 movies, I think.
Okay.
So I've seen the old ones. The first one I think is iconic enough that it needs to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
The other
Alien,
ones are just
1979.
kind of old. So whatever.
Yeah, and then Aliens 1986, Alien 3 92, Alien Resurrection 97, Prometheus 2012.
Oh, so this is number 6.
Alien Covenant 2017.
Okay, I don't think I've seen Alien Resurrection then. I don't know. They are not the best movies ever made, but as far as this genre goes, I think they own the corner on the market.
Cool.
Alien is like
So like
the
space
monster.
thriller or
Yeah.
space horror? Is there a difference between thriller and horror?
It's horror.
It's horror.
Covenant actually had very few jump scenes. It was mostly just gross. Plus really, really awesome
Special
visual effects.
Yeah.
They show up to this planet.
Visual effects. I got to clarify. That's not special effects.
Right.
Special effects is like, we used a claymation guy coming in. Yeah.
They show up to this planet and eventually it's like in the middle of a rainstorm at night. They are led through this giant like stone city that looks like out of Greek or something. It's very, very cool. So it's an aesthetic movie, good and bad. It's there to gross you out. It's there to be like, dang, that looks bananas.
Cool.
So anyway.
All right. Well, anything else before we get to our gentleman for the interview?
Don't think so.
All right. Well, let's jump in then to our fresh roast.
Okay, well, today we've got a group of guys, Mike Giordano, Josh Lund, Danny Antoine, and Diego Cervantes. And you guys come from kind of a different culture, church culture. But
California
first,
is just a different culture.
It's just
and
way out
North
there,
Carolina,
man.
Which is
nobody knows what's going on with you guys. But first, how about you guys just tell us who you are, where you're from, just a little bit about yourself, couple minutes each. Let's start with Mike.
All right. I'm Mike Giordano. I'm from Southern California. I live in a place called Beaumont. I've been married for 37 years, and I have 4 children and 7, soon to be 7 grandchildren. And that's a little bit about me.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Danny Antoine. I'm in Franklin, North Carolina, up in the mountains, Appalachian Mountains right now. I've been married for, this year will be 9 years. My wife and I have 11 kids and 5 grandkids. Massive family. It's awesome, and we love it.
Hi, my name's Josh Lund, and I am from SoCal as well, a little town called Yucaipa. And I've been married for 8 years and have 2 kids, 4 years old and 3 years old.
I'm Diego Cervantes. I am also from a small town called Highland, California. Not married, have no kids. I'm only 19, so that's my.
Better get on that. Man.
Yeah,
I think I have time.
you're not a real Christian man unless you marry by 20 years old. That's the rule.
So, Mike, you specifically have had quite the journey from kind of traditional church models to what you experience now. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit, kind of testimonial-wise, and just your own experience and revelation that came with that, and how you perceive church and what church really is?
All right. Well, I was traditional, started in ministry when I was really young, about 21 years old, and ended up becoming a youth pastor.
Did you have formal training? Like, did you go to like a seminary?
Actually, no, I did not. I did not go to any kind of formal training. I sort of on-the-job learning kind of thing. I know, right? This is really bad, right? And so, it started, in sort of a traditional circle, being a youth pastor. At 22, I pastored my first church. Wow. And it was the worst experience, one of the worst experiences of my life. Got kicked in the shin by a lady who didn't like what I was saying. She literally kicked me in the shins. And
was it during the service, like right as you're preaching?
No, it was right after I preached. She came up to me and she goes, afterwards. "You said this during the sermon." I said, "Yeah, that's what I said." And she goes, "I didn't like what you had to say." And I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to say? I'm sorry, I'm not sure." And she goes, "Retract it right now." And I was like, "Well, no, this is what I believe." And she hauled off and kicked me. Literally kicked me in the shin.
Was she an older lady?
Yeah, she was like 70.
Oh my gosh.
And so
you have to kind of take it when an old person like slaps you around. Though,
yeah,
right?
it's really true.
Yeah,
right.
Back?
I wanted to cast something out of it. And so from there, sort of got involved in I got involved in what is known as a Word of Faith church that were huge in, the 80s, and then was youth pastor there, and then went to a mega church in Colorado, and got to see behind the scenes of what goes on in the big church kind of mentality. And then in 1992, I ended up moving to Southern California, went from a mega church to probably one of the smallest churches I'd ever been a part of. And then I went to, from there, I went to a place in Redlands where pretty much the circle of network, what we do, sort of centered in Redlands. We just say Redlands because that's sort of the central area of what we do.
Sure.
And so it was there that I just sort of, my eyes, I want to say my eyes were open, because a lot of people say, well, you're really frustrated about church, or you're angry about this.
So you moved to Redlands. Are you a part of a church, like on a staff when you moved to Redlands?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I was a part of a church, and every week, I better be careful. They might be listening.
They're all listening. There's only 83
so
people.
It was
we're not that cool.
Every week we would get together at the next day after our Sunday service, and it was like sort of let's evaluate what happened on Sunday.
Okay.
And I remember I was sitting there, and every week it was like, what are we doing? Literally, they would say this: "What are we doing to get butts in the seats?"
Oh man!
And it was like we had this amount of money that we needed every week to basically to survive, and which, it ended up being about $40,000 a month just to pay for the building and for the salaries and stuff like that. And basically, after 9 months of doing that, and I'd been there for about 4 years, but after 9 months, every week we were having that conversation. I just, the lead guy just said, hey, what are we doing to get people here? How are we going to pay for this and what we're going to do? And I looked at him and I just said, are we really having this conversation again? I said, we've been having this conversation for 9 months and nothing actually ever changes. And so he said, well, what would you do if you were me? And I said, if I were you, what would I do? And I said, I would fire you.
Bam.
And he
did he
goes,
take that well?
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
His
Did you
face,
get kicked in the shins?
Yeah, by an old lady. The same old lady walks into the room and just kicks you in the shins.
So his face turned as red as that clock over there that
man.
we're looking at right now for time. And he said, you can't be here any longer.
Oh, man.
And I said, okay, not a problem.
Yeah.
And so I went home and told my wife. I basically, some people say I got fired. Some people say I quit. So
It sounds like you got fired.
I think I got fired.
Yeah.
I got fired.
If you want
that
an
day.
objective opinion.
Yeah,
Sounds like you got fired.
There's something, about getting fired from a church, though, right? This doesn't sound. That seems to be
You
a
got to
problem
do
with
something
me.
special.
Yeah,
to
right.
Get fired.
To
Should
get
I
fired
try?
from
No. Don't answer that question.
And so the Lord was already stirring me in my heart about the church. What is the church? What does the church look like? And the closest thing that I'd ever seen to what I believe the church was is what I saw in India when I went there in 2007. And that was while I was on staff at this church. And so I went there and I saw church as a movement, and I saw it as a network. Because for the most part, the church was like underground, and so they were met from place to place. They didn't have like any one certain structure they went to every week. It was just a different kind of dynamic, and that stirred my heart. And I saw a lot of persecuted young guys, in their 20s, who basically were living on $12, $15 a month, willing to give their life for the gospel. So my heart was stirred, and I was like, why not in America?
Wow.
And so my wife and I and another couple and a few other couples at the time launched out, and we just started meeting in a home and discussing what it meant to be the church. Because I don't believe you can go to a who. Church is not.
Yeah.
Church is a who.
Not the lead pastor guy who's awesome, and
That's right.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, right. It's not a who. It's a person. The church is a living organism of people made up together who are living together in family.
Yeah.
And so that's what we started doing. We started meeting in a home, and then as I was reading the Gospels, I just was stirred. I was like, Jesus was always about taking the 12 to where people were. And so we sort of adopted this kind of lifestyle that the church is meant to be a group of people on mission to take the church to where people were. And so we started like meeting in coffee shops. We started meeting in a place called Drug Court, and we started meeting in bars, and we started meeting in homes, and we encouraged people to disciple people in the workplace. And so that's a little bit of how our journey began and what we started doing.
Cool.
And that's what we've been doing now for almost 10 years.
Wow. Sweet. Danny,
Yes.
I'm pointing at you. Tell, how did you get in connection with Mike, but also just in general, your journey in church discipleship, different model? Like, he's talking about a completely different model of church. We have a traditional model of there's a brick and mortar, but now he's saying, well, let's meet in the homes. Let's disciple one-on-one. Let's bring Jesus out to people. How is that reflected in what you do?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a church, like in the building, the structure more of it. And honestly, when I got married, I felt in the beginning of my marriage that the Father was telling me, basically, if your wife and your daughter has got to go to a building to learn about who I am, you're failing them miserably. And so I brought a bad plan home, said, honey, we're going to start meeting at the house every Sunday. My wife and my daughter looked at me like I was crazy, and we started doing that.
So
And
just your
really,
family in your house?
Just
begin.
me, my
Okay.
wife, and my daughter started out first, and it kind of grew into more, but I didn't have a grid for even a vision to see what that would even look like. I knew what I was reading in the Bible is what I wanted, but I didn't know what that looked like. 5 years ago, I met Mike through a mutual friend of ours, and it was one of those things that, first of all, I instantly felt connected to him. And I love the fact that he was willing to pour into me.
Yeah.
He was willing to pour into my wife and I. And about 3 weeks ago, I got to finally go out and visit, with him out in where he's out there in California. And so that was my first way of getting to see what I thought we had going on at the house, but just on a deeper scale, I'll just say.
Yeah.
Just because, these guys have been meeting like this for like 10 years, and we've always had conversations about it, and he has been the most tremendous help to my wife and I, and just with the home group that we have at the house. So we have a meeting on Sunday mornings and on Monday evenings at the house, and the rest of the week is just, people just coming by, and we just live life with everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what my wife and I knew. We wanted to share life with people, and we felt like that's what God was calling us to do. And once we started getting more of a concrete vision with it, like through just everything that Mike was teaching us and just kind of walking us through, because I have lots of challenges just like anybody else, and just anytime I'd bring a challenge to Mike, man, he'd give me homework.
Yeah.
It's like, oh really, that's what's going on? Well, how about you think about this? I had to go back and hash that thing around and tell my wife what the good news that Mike gave me. And we kind of went through it together, and it's been awesome. So 3 weeks ago, when I went out there and got to actually see like a lot of what Mike's been talking to me about, because he'd always say like, man, you just have to come out there and just come and be a part of this and come see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It made perfect sense, because for me, it concretized everything that I'd been reading in the Word, and everything that I felt like God was pushing us towards. I felt like after that, I got to actually see more of a physical manifestation of it.
So what was different about what you saw with Mike going out there than what you kind of were already started doing?
It's not a one-man show. That's the number one thing. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's not showing up to Mike's house every week just to hear Mike preach.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
As a matter of fact, he dropped something to me while we were out there in California. He was like, you know what the word preaching means? He said it means dialogue. He said we don't hardly even use that word. We facilitate. So each person in the community gets a chance to facilitate at different times. So which means it gives people a point of reference to realize your voice is really healthy and important, and everyone gets involved, which I thought that was awesome.
Wow.
And that changed a lot for us at the house, and people have been excited, back at home. Just once I've come back and kind of explained to them what my experiences were out there, just everybody at the house has just been very excited.
Cool.
And another thing is they meet from house to house. That was new to me too, because we've always met at my house until now, and now we're shifting into like just kind of doing that, because to me that teaches people hospitality, number one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it gives people a sense of just step up to the plate. You know what I mean? Like this is everybody's job, not a one person show, and that's been one of the most impactful things for my wife and I.
Cool. Wow. Awesome. Josh. All right, next we got 4 guys, so you're gonna bear with us, listeners. You're gonna hear a lot of different stories. Josh, how did you get to know Mike? I know you met him about 7 years ago. He started investing in your life. What is what he did different in how you perceive church, and how has that affected you?
Yeah. So, so what we did. Well, my wife and I, we attended a box church, as I call it.
A box church. Yes. Right off the shelf, you picked the box.
Yeah. We attended the box church for a while, and we got kind of disillusioned with the hierarchy, top down. Pastor / CEO. Is the ruler of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And, we got burned, and, it was very painful, and we felt like, we needed to do something else. Well, Mike has been investing in me, for 7 years, and, never really pushed us in that direction, wasn't never trying to, why don't you just come in and see what we're all about? So it took a point of getting to that in our lives where we're like, what, let's do this differently. We've been to some of these box churches, and it's just the same old thing. It's the same old program, it's the same old routine, it's the same old show. let's see what these guys have to offer, or just get plugged into something. So we ended up having a Seder, a Gentile Seder over at Mike's house, which was super cool. I had kind of been, being turned in that direction, but my wife is ultra, conservative, like has to be at church on Wednesday, Sunday night, and really grew up having that instilled in her. And so for her, it was this huge stretch to not be seen at church on Sunday. And so we decided, all right, let's do this. So we went to the Seder, and she just had this instant connection with the community there. And it was just a sense of belonging and love and respect for each other, and just a genuine spirit of peace, in that group of people. And it was magnetic. It was magnetic for us. And so we've never been back since to the box church. And it's been an incredible journey.
What kind? You kind of saying it's magnetic. What specifically is pulling you? Like, is it the family atmosphere? Is it it's just not the same, so I'm more intrigued, or is it something a little bit more concrete? Sure.
So when I say magnetic, I think there's when something's magnetized, there's a pull in both directions. There's a reason why something's being pulled. Yeah. And so I think, what they, were presenting and what we, were needing, it was just boom. Yeah. It was there. And so, it was so real and authentic, and something that we hadn't seen in the churches that we had been in. It was, everybody had a voice, and everybody was able to share, what we were talking about in the word for that day. Just incredible, prayer sessions, praying over people, not just saying, hey, brother, I'll pray for you. Or even having the opportunity to say, yeah, I'm struggling. I do need prayer, Yeah. Just having that type of environment to foster those conversations, it was life-changing for us.
Wow, dude.
Diego, how about you? What has your journey been like?
All right, so
your 19-year journey. So start in the womb.
Okay. No, so I saw a bright light
and two hands reaching out.
And you started crying.
There you go. Yeah, and my life's never been the same. Yeah. So I met Mike 2 years ago at our CrossFit gym, and it was a weird experience meeting Mike because he was just some guy that had always worked out with us. I mean, I didn't even know he was a pastor, and he gave us like a message, my family. And he kind of told us something that, that God has the situation that we're going through in his hands, And it was weird because we've never heard anything like that before. No one's ever approached us and told us that. I mean, we went to a mega church, and
so big box church.
A big box church, okay. Yeah. One of the big ones. And it was the typical, you have to go every Sunday because if you don't go, then you're not a real Christian. Yes. And we believed that for a little bit. We were my dad always, kind of was like, we have to go. The only time I really felt close to God was when I was at the church, because I felt like that's the only real time that I'm with God. And so when we met Mike, going into this new kind of community and new kind of culture was a big shocker. I mean, it was weird. I was like, this is odd. Yeah. I'm sure we're in a cult right now.
Yeah. I was like, we're definitely having a podcast where we have the cult leader here describing how he's going around and getting into everyone's life.
Yeah, just don't drink the Kool-Aid. So it took us a while to, trying to get relaxed and really, trust him. I mean, you can ask Mike. I mean, I did not trust him. It was, I didn't know the guy. And when we really started getting comfortable and realizing, what we're doing it the way that Jesus did it, it's just a beautiful thing, to be able to, sit with family and just love on each other and just, praise God and to be intimate and just talk to each other and just, talk about things we're going through and pray for each other and lay hands and just really just go through this journey and this walk that we're going through with God with each other. And that is so different from the mega church because I never talked to anybody. I didn't know one person at my church. I mean, I didn't even like people talking to me because I was like, I don't know you. Don't talk to me. They like you would, in the beginning, they would be like, please stand up and introduce yourself. And I'm like, dang it, I gotta talk to people now, But when I started doing this, I was just like, I want to go more. Let's just, I want to meet with Mike more than once a week. Let's just do everything we can because I really was thirsting for that, I mean, I fell in love with God. I've never been so in love with him than now.
Cool.
So it's been an amazing journey, and I'm just, I haven't gone back to the other church. I tried going back one time, and I sat there, and I was like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm leaving.
Wow.
So that was it.
That's when you lost your salvation.
That's a little too roasted for me.
So, I mean, we still participate in a traditional style box church.
We have a small box.
It's very small box. But I think a lot of the things you guys are saying are true. And my question kind of for you guys is a traditional model still viable in any regard, or is it really inhibitive to the kingdom? Is it a tool that can be used, or just let's punt the whole thing?
Well, two things. First of all, I would say God loves his people. Jesus loves his people. He loves his bride, all right? And so we're called to love what he loves, and that's his bride, and that's people, right? We're not here to bash box churches. You ask us our journey, and so we're telling you our journey.
No,
right?
that's what we want. We're
not here to bash the box. That's not what we're after to do. So you ask the question, is it viable? I think if I can just be really honest with you guys, okay?
That's no.
I have to be honest with you, sarcastic bastards. And you can edit that out if you like. If you're not,
we roll in it.
Okay. So you already got me in. You get me in trouble every time I come around.
We had a big swearing episode.
People are wanting to meet with me.
If they still are listening,
people are wanting to meet with me after the last podcast.
Yeah.
Here, while I'm here right now, I got to go and have
Let's just
meetings.
say the box has gotten smaller since we started this podcast.
Okay. So. The second thing that I would really want you to understand, I don't believe that you can actually say church is a model, because I don't believe church is a model. Church is living, right? So you have to think of it in the, it's really interesting. Jesus only used the word church twice in the whole Gospels. 4 pages, all these pages of 4 different writers, and he only uses it twice. All right. So what we have called the church, I believe in the West, it's hard for us to grasp this because the church is where you go. It's not who you are. It's not a living organism. So you ask the question, is it viable? Is it viable? If I have to be honest with you, I believe that if you're talking about the people, yes, it's viable. If you're talking about the structure, no, it's not.
So essentially the structure of a you come to a building on Sunday or any day of the week you pick. You come to a building, you worship together, you leave, and don't intermingle afterwards for another 6 days until that next day comes back. That model, as a model, you would say that doesn't work.
As Jesus said, it is as you say it is.
In other parlance, mic drop.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think of model. Okay, getting outside of the traditional box style is not necessarily new. I mean, well, Jesus modeled it, but I think especially like with folks like Neil Cole and stuff who've been championing these new ideas, it's been around for a little while.
Actually, since the book of Acts.
Yeah, right. I was going to say a little while.
And it's gone through several different phases, but I think as far as the Western church is concerned, we've been traditional for a long time.
True.
Do you see the church kind of in America changing, or are we stuck in the traditional sense? And if so, why are we stuck? Is it insecurity or?
Well, I do think it's changing, and the reason I see it's changing is because I just read a recent study that in the last year alone, 20,000 millennials have left organized religion. They haven't left Jesus, but they've left organized religion. 20 million in the United States. All right.
Wow.
So you look at that. I mean, that's almost 10% of the population of America that has left organized religion. So yes, things are changing. So that is definitely happening. Is there a return? I believe it's that. I think the reality is that people are dissatisfied with the way things are, and because they're dissatisfied, they're looking for something fresh and new and living. They're looking for family. They're looking for relation. Everybody on this planet is looking for family. They really are. And so when you encounter family, and you experience that, it's like, oh, I'm home.
You guys were kind of saying that, like, there was something different about what we experienced. And Mike was saying how church is, it's a living thing. Whoever wants to say it, but how is the church living for you now? Like, how is it a living thing for you now? Like, what about it is alive that wasn't before?
Right. So for me, my wife and I, we had tried, multiple churches, and essentially it was coming right back to the same old thing. It was maybe just, ordered, structured a little bit differently, but it was really the same old thing. And for us, we had to do something so radically different to kind of break out of that mold. So when we did, get into Mike's community, it was just like, wow, there isn't the typical structure here. And, to me, it was like, man, the typical structure is just death. It's just, you go in, you do your time. It's like a prison sentence.
Yeah.
Sure. You go in, okay, all the boxes are checked. We do the intro song, and then we do the greet, and then, we do some more, music, two or three more songs, and then we have announcements. Then we have the pastor get up there. Then we have another song at the end, and then it's off to lunch.
Yeah.
We got to get to lunch quick. With this, it's so, it feels alive because you never know what you're going to get each time. And that's so cool about it. There are some times where we just pray over each other, and it's, and those are some of the most, crazy, impactful, meetings, gatherings that we have, where we may not even crack open the Bible. And we don't even get to, what maybe, whoever was going to teach for that day. But we thought the Holy Spirit comes in and moves and just wrecks people. Yeah. And it's incredible. And so when I say alive, that's really what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the Spirit move among the Lord's people.
What about you guys?
A question that comes to my mind is, for anyone, like, what's more life-giving to you? Sitting next to people who are strangers, or sharing life with some amazing people every day? What's more life-giving?
Yeah.
To sit next to a stranger doesn't take a whole lot, but like to actually get involved in someone's life and get to live life with that person daily. And you guys are exchanging and going through life together, and you're walking this thing out together. There's no room for loneliness at that point, because you have not just someone, but you got an entire family with you, which is, to me, what it should be. You know what I mean? I think about, like, Mike, for example, taking a moment to invest in me. We live on two different sides of the country, but yet once a week we still meet. Yep. Because he's so involved in my life, and I get to be involved in his life and with his wife's life. I mean, even across the country, we get to share this. I mean, I'm not in California with these guys, and neither is my wife, but I feel so connected to them because of the relationship aspect, rather than, I'm going to go visit you and you're going to take me somewhere, we're going to sit next to each other. And after that, we're going to go home.
Yep.
Peace out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So to me, that's what that means to me. That's what it reflects to me. It's like, it's life-giving because we're getting to be involved in each other's lives. And it's awesome to hear, like, different perspectives. Like, I know what I may have grown up with. I know what I'm thinking. But when I hear Diego come with something, I'm like, dude, that was awesome. You know what I mean? And Josh will drop something on me. I'm like, this is life. You know what I'm saying? And just realizing that. And then it's comforting too, like, even with Mike, like, us getting to do life together rather than just kind of just sitting there and he's just lecturing me all day long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's life-giving.
Yep. There's a connection.
Yeah.
Good. All right, Diego.
Yeah, like they were saying, it's alive because it's so intimate. It's just when I went to, my mega church, I never talked to anybody. I never really got invested in other people's lives. I wouldn't go around asking, how's your day going? How's your day going? Can I pray for you? Can I talk to you about something, And now when we just go out, it's just like whenever I'm with Mike or with, these guys, there's a connection, there's an intimacy, it's just like family, It's not like we're just people who go to church together. We're like a family. When I first met Danny, he had known my dad before he knew me. And I just met him one day and we just clicked. It was just like we had known each other forever. It's because we're intimate. We have that connection.
Yep. Wow. What would you say about the person who says, I get life out of the traditional model? Like I feel connection to Holy Spirit, to the people I sit to. Maybe they're strangers, but I try to reach out. I make a connection with people as often as I can. I'm maybe not like sharing as much as I could at home, or it's not the same kind of, logistical structure that you guys maybe do,
right.
But they say they get life out of it.
Right.
I mean, is that
Great.
okay, right?
Good for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And again, it's going back to we don't feel the need to validate what we do. We just do what we do, right? Yeah. And we're answering these questions because you're asking them, right? But it's not like we're on a soapbox somewhere bashing the box. We're not doing that. Yeah. That's not what we do. We don't do that in our meetings. It never comes up. I mean, honestly, it never comes up because this is the thing. It's not about meetings, and that's what we think of in the West. Whenever we talk about church in the West, we always talk about meetings, right? And we miss the whole. I really believe the nuts and bolts of really the church in its greatest form, which we talked about this weekend when we're here, is the church of two. The church of two is because that is the place of where you invest, you spend time with each other, you pray with each other, you do the one another's of the New Testament. That is, to me, that's church in its purest form. Because, I take this thing called MCT oil. Right? MCT oil is the purest form of coconut oil on the planet. All right. So if I want to get the purest form of coconut oil, I'm going to take MCT oil. If you want to get the purest form of the church, make disciples and spend time with people.
Okay.
I can't find that in the Bible anywhere.
Yeah,
though.
MCT oil.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's in the Cliff Notes.
And he just said, to accentuate, he said coconut, like not just Coke and it's coconut, coconut oil.
So, Danny, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, we know like California is full of hippies and they do stuff totally different.
Weird guys.
But there's no way it should have infiltrated North Carolina by now. Like,
right.
We're doing our best as a government
so
to
now
restrict that.
you've had kind of a taste of what it's like in California. You've had a similar model, but obviously things are a little different on the opposite coast. Can you talk about that? Like how does culture kind of influence the way that you go about discipleship and meetings and
Man, I don't know that I look at it more as culture as much as I look at it more like as Holy Spirit.
Okay.
What does the Holy Spirit want? Like, how's he moving? God can't be put in a box. You know what I mean? Like, he's so much bigger than we could ever imagine. So for us to think that we can box God in and meet together and think that it's just going to be the same thing every day, that's not God. He's creative. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's got a different flavor. I think it's not just from coast to coast. It'll have a different flavor from house to house. It'll definitely have a different flavor from person to person, because we were created to be different. We were created to be individuals, and everyone's got something really important that they bring to the table. We don't always get to experience that because we don't always open that door. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we don't understand, like, just being the body. We got to be open to each other. I heard somebody say the other day, like, the church is the only army that shoots its own wounded.
Boom.
Think about that. The church is the only army in the world that shoots its own wounded. Why are we kicking each other while we're down? Because you do something different, it automatically means in people's minds that, you're going against something. That's not the point. You know what I mean? When you asked earlier about like just coming from a traditional church, like does it still work? Those are still God's babies too.
Yep.
We're all God's kids, man. You know what I mean? So we may have a different flavor. What's being presented right now is just something that has been, say, on our hearts. You know, I can't look at anybody ever and say, well, this is just a better way of doing things. What I'm telling you is I find life in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I want to share life with people. You know what I'm saying? So that to me, that just makes sense, you know, when it comes to that.
I don't think these guys are authentic at all. I think they want this.
It's just a front.
Yeah, it's just they're totally inauthentic. Jeez Louise.
Speaking of that, have you guys, from your like departure, gotten backlash from those around you?
Josh is nodding his head. Go, Josh.
Okay.
Yeah. So
from his wife, who wanted this.
We definitely felt that. You know, we still have family in, you know, the last church that we were at, and we had family on staff actually at that church, and so it's very interesting when they ask you, well, you know, where are you going to church, and we say. What we tell them is we have a house church, and the look on people's faces, they just kind of stop. Oh, really? and that's it.
Yeah.
When they ask my wife, you know, and that's just, you know, depending on who you're talking to. When they ask my wife, they'll get how do you tithe? You know, how do you
straight to the money?
Yeah, and so they go right to they go right to the money. Well, what about, you know, if there's you know, questions that come up with what about church discipline, and so they start to go through this litany of
the practicals. There's still practical elements that you
absolutely
kind of have to address, like church discipline. Actually, that's a fair question of. What about if Joe Blow over here is, you know, having an affair with someone else, and we have a small, intimate group? Like, that's a fair question.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you want to know the answer?
Well, yeah.
So do all of our listeners.
All of these listeners are like, yes, get to a practical church. How do you deal with kids in your thing? Like, we get that.
We have powerful kids stuff going on, man. It's actually probably Danny can speak to this because he was just there, and he went to one of our children's communities that meets in an apartment complex, because we have a lady who goes around. She actually is in Southeast Asia right now, working with leaders and training and planting more kids communities all over Southeast Asia. So how do we deal with children? Well, we deal with them because children are part of the church, and we train them to be disciple makers just like we are. And how do we deal with church discipline? Well, if you're living, you know, not according to your design, according to your dignity, we will sit you down and deal with you. But here's the reality, you know, and I know this to be factual, right? Because in many box churches, you don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right? You just get away with whatever you want to get away with. You can't hide in this way of life. You can't hide.
There's way more accountability in the smaller group, right?
Absolutely.
And so when someone... It's affecting all of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's going to be affecting everyone.
Right. And if you try to hide, the Holy Spirit, you know, he has a way of lovingly showing, really revealing. And so, you know, and how do you deal with people's attitudes? You know, one of the things we never deal with in the Western church, we deal with adultery, we deal with sinful issues. What about gluttony? We don't ever talk about that.
Yeah.
Right? What about gossip? We don't ever talk about that.
What about pride?
Yeah, exactly. We don't ever talk about those things. We just talk about, you know, the sexual things.
Yeah,
that's the things that we deal with.
The obvious ones that
right.
everybody
when
can
you're in a discipling relationship with people, then you can actually get to character issues with people. And that to me is that's what to me was one of the most revealing and most powerful things with people. And then you get to see transformation, which is really more powerful.
So that's the next thing I was going to say is, have you felt more transformation in your personal lives, and maybe for you two who are married, in your marriage, dealing with your kids, Diego, with your family who's very extended? Like, what kind of transformations have you seen now in your life doing church this way?
Yeah, like Mike said, you can't run. You know, and when you come into a group, you know, when you're coming in on a Wednesday night, you can we know each other, I think, well enough to where you can just look at that person and say, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so, we're at a point where we're comfortable with, to say, airing out dirty laundry, but just being real and accountable with people with where we're at. Mm-hmm. And, man, there's power in that, because what happens is people come alongside you. And they love you, and they provide wisdom and encouragement, and that's what makes an impact. So for my marriage, it's strengthened. My marriage, who I am as a dad, and we've got young families, part of our group, and it makes me want to strive to be a better man of God for my family. And having that closeness, those intimate relationships, just help sharpen me to be that.
One of the things for my wife and I that I believe we both love this aspect of it is, like you said, you can't run. It gives an opportunity that every time somebody would hear myself or my wife say something, you're in my house every day. You want to know people, live with them.
Yeah.
You really want to get to know somebody, just live with them. You'll see. You're going to know all the mess. You know what I mean? So it's a prime opportunity for anybody who we're involved with, especially if there's somebody that we're leading, somebody that we're counseling with. So it gives them an opportunity to every day get to see, is what's coming out of my mouth matching up with what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like I'm not standing behind a pulpit. You're in my bedroom, you're in my living room, like you're getting to see this stuff. When you show up, you want to know people's lives, show up unexpected.
Yeah, right. Jeez.
You gotta know exactly what's going on. So people come to the house like all the time, and we absolutely love living with people, like hanging out with people that way. You know what I mean? Because it makes it authentic. It makes it to where, again, you really can't hide anything, nor should you want to. How freeing is that when you get to just be around people and just be yourself? Yeah. You don't have to make everything perfect. Like, my wife used to be one, like, the house had to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Everything had to be clean. If it wasn't clean, there's going to be some drama in my house, right? If people left the house and stuff didn't get clean before they left, that's another tornado coming through my house, right? Now I look at my wife, and that woman is so chill. Mm-hmm. Like, people will show up, and she's just like, hey, how you doing? Just feeding everybody as they come in. Well, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's like a thing of beauty, and it's something that we're missing, because it's like you said, like, everybody's looking for family. Well, what happens when they don't get it? Yeah. Then you get all the crazy things that we're dealing with all the time, that we always want to just deal with the symptom of it instead of going to the core of it. People lack identity. They do crazy things because no one cares in their mind. Mm-hmm. So they don't feel like it's a problem for them to go do something crazy or dumb. You know what I mean? But when you have people who love you and you're accountable, like in the way of like somebody who just loves you and adores you and doesn't want to see something crazy go on with you, that changes somebody's life, man. It changes kids' lives. It changes adults' lives.
Wow.
Yeah, well, for me, it's kind of, allowed us to be more open with each other. Back in our old church, after church, that was it. Church was the time that we had. And then after that, we would try to read the Bible more and kind of, talk about it. But it never happened, We got busy with our lives. And the only time that we really took time to spend with God was during church. And so, this learning how to be more open with God and how to, be more open with each other really brought us closer, I feel, and it's even allowed me to bring other family into our church. I have my cousins coming with us, on Sundays and on Wednesdays, and then we started our own discipleship group. So it's really allowing us to open up with each other a lot more than before when I was at the other church.
Sure, yeah. What would you guys say to the person who's like, man, I just don't have the time? I just don't have, like, wow, the evenings, they're busy. Mm-hmm. Church is convenient because it's at the 10 o'clock on Sunday and there's no, like, that doesn't interfere with other thing. I work 80 hours a week. I got 3 kids at home. Man, I just don't got the time.
You're doing what's important to you. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as busy. That's a complete cop-out. It's not. Busy is a fallacy. It's you're doing what's important to you. So if you're working 80 hours a week, it means That's important to you. So whatever is important to you is what you will do in life. So if community is important to you, you'll find a way to be in community. And the beauty about this is the difference is if you don't view church as something you go to, then you literally, in its purest form, right? Going back to the MCT oil, right? You can have church 7 days a week in as many locations as possible. You don't have to look at one sacred time, because we have sacred times in America, right? Yep. And the most predictable time in America is at 12 o'clock on Sunday, because everybody's flocking out to get to the restaurant.
I was going to say grocery store.
Exactly. Or the grocery store, right?
12, you go to Willie's, it's freaking packed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad they put in the self-check so that way you can avoid grandmas with the big shopping cart.
It's the most predictable time in America. Yeah. So if the beauty about doing life this way is that it's 7 days a week. I mean, literally, there's stuff going on 7 days a week on multiple fronts, on many locations, all throughout where we live, because church is where life happens.
Yeah. Wow. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts?
Yeah.
Other questions?
I would say, okay, now it is soapbox time.
Yeah.
You have someone who's on the fence.
Yeah.
About, do I join what you're doing? Do I leave what I'm comfortable with?
Yeah.
And make the risk? We'll go left to right here. You're last, Mike.
I'm last. Okay.
Yeah. And just someone's on the fence and they're like, I don't know if I should join what you're doing. Like, why? Why should I do discipleship church? Why should I do it differently?
Well, what I told my cousins was, just come try it out and, see how we do it and how, how there's an atmosphere of love, if you really want to, if you have that desire to be intimate and, to really connect with God, come try it out. If it's not for you and you're comfortable and that's, what you like, then go ahead, it's whatever. Cause I'm not going to, knock the big church. It's where I found my faith. So,
Sure. Yeah.
But it's just, this church is where I feel more comfortable now.
Yeah.
So
you live in your faith. Good.
I would tell somebody, like Mike said, you have to make your own decision. And if it's working for you, great. If it's not, if you're on the fence right now, I'd say give it a shot. What do you have to lose? I think so often we're trapped in this, these frames of mind that have been pre-established for us. And we don't question why we're afraid to question, any other different mode of thought. And so, I say, give it a shot, and see what you think. Tell me if this feels any different than what you're used to. And then, let's talk about it.
Wow.
My wife and I would just tell people, I have never had any desire to pull anybody away from, say, even a church structure. Here's the reason why: because we're all family. If you invite me to come visit, I have no issues with that. I'll come. We're going to hang out. The biggest thing I'll ask people is, if you want to come, just come spend some time hanging out with us. It doesn't mean you have to stop what you're doing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Leave that to people. People's got stuff that they want to do. They have stuff that they got to do. You know what I mean? I just say, okay, we get together on Monday nights. It's not like you have to leave a church to come hang out. Just come spend some time with us. Let's just spend some time together. It could happen during a meeting time, or it could happen just, let's go out to have dinner. I try not to be in a place of telling people, you should go ahead and drop what you're doing, because that ain't working. That's just not cool.
Yeah, cool.
All right, I have a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm going to roast you all.
Good. Yeah!
First of all, I personally am not interested in getting people from other churches to be a part of this, and I'll tell you why. Because they already have a wheelhouse. They already have a language that they've already created that basically has set them in this kind of way of life, right? I am more interested in people that are completely disconnected from church and that are disenfranchised or either have no interest at all whatsoever. Yeah. That's personally what I'm after, because to me, that's the people you can actually train.
Brainwash, train.
Yes. Yeah, you can say brainwash. Yes, because Jesus,
vulnerable. I'll take
we will gladly wash your
Yes,
brain
exactly.
from that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Man.
So for me personally, that's not what I if people are like in a traditional church, and which we don't have this happen, it's very rare. But if they do, I would say to them, stay where you are. Mm-hmm. You really need to stay where you are, and because I don't want to get into a swapping fish mentality, because a lot of times people have to unlearn a way of life to do this way of life. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for people. I mean, Diego's parents, for example, they're a good example of this, because they stand up, sit down, sing a few songs. We'll see you next week. If you're not here, we don't even know you're not here. So for us, one of the things that, they said they had to vet me. They vetted me for a year. Because they did not understand that this was a participatory community, and so for them, they had to unlearn what it meant to be a part of a community where you are the church. Yeah. You don't go, it's nothing you go to, it's something that you're a part of. It's something that you live now as a way of life. And so for me, not about swapping fish, because to me, that's not what we're after. Yeah. We're after people that are really, that are sort of out there, that God is working in their life. Mm-hmm. And I'll just conclude with this real quick. There's a great book called Joining God in the Neighborhood by Alan Roxburgh. He's what they call a missionologist. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically he studies culture, right? And he talks about, he starts his book, and he describes it as he goes to a party, and I'm thinking, this is weird. And he goes, and there's this guy at the party, and all he does at the party is he talks about himself. And he's just completely absorbed and self-absorbed. And I'm reading this, it's chapter after chapter after chapter, where he's discussing how this guy is talking about, well, I own this boat, and I have this yacht, and I have this, and this is how much money, and I have that comes in every week. And then at the end of the chapter, he says, that annoying guy that I just described, that's church in the West. Ooh. Because all they do is talk about themselves. It's not about the person. It's not about the people that are away from this. It's about us being so self-absorbed about ourselves that's all we can talk about. And that stung me, man. That got to my heart, because I was like, think about, God is already at work, and that's his whole premise, that God is at work all around us in the lives of people, unbeknownst to us, because he's put his design in everyone. And our mission and our adventure is really to connect with them and find out how he's working in them. And that, to me, is awesome. Fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Good. Well, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. And
our pleasure.
And
glad to be here.
Telling us about what you're doing for discipleship in church. This is great. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Bump.
Truth bombs were dropped.
Truth bombs. The J bomb.
Drops.
All right.
Don't drop it for real. Don't drop it.
Well, again, a special thank you to Mike, Josh, Danny, and Diego for joining us and talking about discipleship, talking about church, talking about how what they do and how they do it affects their life and the gospel and the kingdom advancing, and real enjoyment in church, really, in a lot of different ways. So I want to thank those guys again, and hopefully you were challenged in some of your ways of how you think and approach church. So, all right, it comes down to our segment, and our segment today is Ancient Arguments. And this week in Ancient Arguments, is a hot dog a sandwich? John, I'm approaching for you, and then I will have to take the opposite opposite side of the argument than what you choose.
Well, I am a word dude.
You are a word dude.
And even though I saw your notes and I know how you're going to counter argue it, I am going with the denotative meaning of sandwich.
Okay.
Which is, according to Google and most other dictionaries, sandwich is an item of food consisting of two pieces of bread with meat, cheese, or other filling between them, eaten as a light meal.
Well, based on that strict definition, a hot dog definitely isn't a sandwich because it's one piece of bread.
But sometimes they split.
Yeah, but your definition just said two pieces of bread.
So you're going to say that a hoagie is not a sandwich?
Correct. It's a hoagie based on that definition.
But if you saw a hoagie on a table and you said, grab me that sandwich.
Yes. So now going with that. Okay. So,
So you didn't even let me get my whole okay.
All right.
I say that a hot dog is a sandwich because of the definition of a sandwich being something where meat is in between pieces of bread, and the verb to insert or squeeze between two things, typically in a restricted space, so as to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
Sorry, hot dog. So you're going with the it's not two things, it's only one. Or what?
Well, I'm going with that as John just walks right out of the room. He grabs his cup. He goes to get water. He just leaves me here to my own mental anguish.
I don't want to hear your argument.
Okay, so we have talked about swearing on this podcast before, and how culture.
Wow. You're okay.
Yeah. We're gonna get into this, John. No, how culture plays a major factor into a true definition of a word, or how a word is used or understood. Right? Dictionary definitions are often either incomplete or don't consider exceptions.
According to,
like, history.
Okay, what's an example besides the argument that you're going to present?
I would say, has there ever been a time when a definition has changed of a word with Merriam-Webster?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not complete then.
No, language evolves over time.
Okay. But why? Because culture demands that? Use demands that?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, usage of the word changes.
Okay, so use determines definition, not the other way around.
Okay.
So we use
Unless you're in France, oddly enough.
Okay.
They have like a committee of people that decide which words get entered into the dictionary because they want to keep the French language pure and kind of static. So like they had to think for a long time about like all the electronic lingo because it was invented in American, basically. Like, are we going to have like email as like a French word?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So with that if use determines definition, how we use the word sandwich, like let's take the interchangeability example, right? If there was a cup of coffee, my cell phone, and a hot dog on a picnic table, and we're at a picnic, and I say, hey, John, could you grab my sandwich? And you look at that picnic table, and you would turn around and say to me, you must have already eaten it because there's no sandwich on this table.
In maybe not as many words, but yes.
But in general, right?
Sure.
Right. Or if I said, if there was a bologna sandwich, 2 white pieces of bread with bologna in the middle, a hot dog, and I said, would you grab my sandwich? Would you turn around and ask me, which one?
All right.
No, you would grab the sandwich.
In the same way, though, that culture appropriates words, they don't always appropriate them correctly. Which is sometimes why we need the dictionary.
So that's actually a good point. How is that true?
Well, I'm looking at this definition. By definition, a hot dog would be a sandwich. But because
so would an Oreo cookie?
Yes, but very loose. Because with this definition, I think the primary function of it is a meat sandwich. And with an Oreo, you're talking about the quote other filling.
What if the filling is a soy hot dog? It's not meat. It's soy.
Well, I wouldn't grab it anyway.
But you would still call it a hot dog.
Okay, but my original point is that language sometimes twists words because of daily use, even though its real definition is something other.
So that's what I'm arguing, is that what is the real definition? I would argue that the real definition then is more determined by how people use it, not what one book has said it is used to be.
Let me use an example. Let's see. I should have thought of some examples. Well, I guess, okay, prodigal.
Okay.
I always thought that prodigal, because of cultural appropriation, meant somebody who ran away from their family.
Okay.
The actual dictionary definition of prodigal is a spendthrift. And the only way that I knew that was because of the dictionary.
Sure.
So if I were going off of strictly cultural appropriation, I had a misunderstanding of the word that I was using.
Now, okay.
Same thing I would argue with the sandwich. We all call only one kind of thing a sandwich, when in reality, the definition for sandwich is broader. So you're saying because we only use it one way, it should only be used that way. And I'm saying if it fits the definition in the dictionary, then it is by definition a sandwich.
But I would argue that definitions of a dictionary are limited in scope and don't offer exceptions. There are exceptions to a definition in a dictionary that they can't define all exceptions.
Such as?
Well, I would consider a hot dog as an exception to a sandwich.
Right, but you have to prove your rule here with another example.
Well, I need a lot of words. Okay, I got one thing here. Birds and reptiles. Let's see. There is a paraphyletic group versus monophyletic groups. A paraphyletic group is a monophyletic group contains all of the descendants of a common ancestor, but a paraphyletic group contains all descendants of a common ancestor with some exceptions.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, mammals are a monophyletic group because they contain all the descendants of the original proto-mammal. Reptiles, on the other hand, are an example of a paraphyletic group. The common ancestor of all reptiles is also the common ancestor of birds and mammals, but birds and mammals are not considered reptiles.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, like, based on the definition of the thing, they fall under the category, but it isn't that. Just because the definition is broad enough to cover the scope of it doesn't mean it isn't. So like an Oreo is by definition, it's cookie crumbs, which is bread and has something in the middle and it's sandwiched between the two things. But it's not a sandwich. It falls under the category because the definition just so happens to be broad enough. But it's not actually a sandwich. There's a broad sense of the term and a use case, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so a sandwich is also a thing. While it can be a broad sense, but it's also a thing.
But let me spin it back the other way. Say you had like a meme or a comedian or something.
Okay.
And he was like, you want to know what my favorite sandwiches are? Oreos. And he like just stuffed his face with them. Mm-hmm. It would be funny because we kind of understand that an Oreo is just the stupidest version of a sandwich.
Correct. Yeah. So also what about a burrito?
Don't think that is the same. But
so there's actually a judge ruling about burritos.
Okay.
There was a case where a Panera Bread and a Qdoba, a Panera Bread sued a Qdoba for coming into like a mall because the Qdoba had like
sandwich rights.
The Panera Bread had sandwich rights.
Wow.
They had sandwich rights as being the only sandwich shop in this strip or something like that, and so they said your burrito is technically a sandwich and you can't be here. Well, the judge. Where is it? The core. What did the judge say? Okay. He used the dictionary definition and what is called basically common sense. He cited Webster's definition of a sandwich, but they provide their own understanding of what a burrito is, a food item typically made with a single tortilla stuffed with a choice filling of meat instead of 2 pieces of bread. It's therefore Qdoba 1. I think there's an element of both things, of the dictionary definition plus how people use it. I think the definition, just because it's conveniently broad enough to cover just about anything, right? Doesn't necessarily make the things that you make then real sandwiches.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's what I would say is it's broad enough but that doesn't make it good and doesn't make it necessarily right. I almost think there should be like another word that is taking place of the word sandwich. We call it food holder. I don't know, but I don't know what you call it.
Food glove?
It takes the definition of the word sandwich, and then sandwich gets its own new definition.
Sure.
Of like, it's 2 pieces of bread with non-patty in the middle, because we have hamburger and cheeseburger. Those would technically be sandwiches, but we call them burgers, right? And non-hot dogs, right? We like in America in general, maybe a lot everywhere, is we like to make a definition and the rule is always the rule and it's always the case, but we forget about the exceptions. There's always exceptions to rules and exceptions, I think, to definitions. And I think a hot dog is an exception to the sandwich dictionary definition. And there's a National Hot Dog and Sausage Council that did a poll, and no, it's not. It's not. They're like, no, we're not a sandwich. You know. And also for the item exchanging. So if the definition works, it should be able to be interchangeable for all of the things that it has, right? So we were talking about exchanging sandwich for a thing on a table, like hot dog and right. So one of my examples was like, if I had sunglasses on the table and I said, could you get my eyewear? Eyewear is a very broad term, right? It could be sunglasses, it could be a monocle, it could be regular glasses, it could be goggles. It's a lot of things, right? Fall under eyewear. But I can interchange that with the word sunglasses. I could say, get my eyewear, and you'd be like, oh, there's sunglasses on the table. Must be his. We can't do that with sandwich and hot dog.
Right. And that's where your cultural side, I think, comes in.
And cereal. Cereal technically falls under the definition of soup, but it's not soup. It's cereal.
Right. So I guess underpinning this whole argument is really how highly we value the dictionary.
Well, like, I think there's a fundamental flaw of broad definitions that cover so many things that aren't showing like exceptions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Which is inherently a shortcoming of cultural linguistics. Not so much the dictionary, but whatever.
Okay. So there you have it, folks. A hot dog isn't a sandwich. But it kind of is, but it's not. But it's not. So. Okay. Well.
But an Oreo is.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to our first episode in season 3. Remember that a hot dog is not a sandwich. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagrams. Download previous episodes on iTunes, Google Play, or roastedchristian.com. Make sure if you go to iTunes, leave a review. That will really help bump up our rating, and maybe someday we'll actually get on a scale where people would see us as a top whatever podcast. That'd be cool. You can also catch us on YouTube, and you can like our videos, and that would be helpful too. So with that, this has been the Roasted Christian Podcast, and I'm Bobby.
I'm John.
Thanks for listening.
You're welcome.